Ali Milani joins me, National Chair at the Labour Muslim Network. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Sheila. Thank you so much for having me.
How are you interpreting these comments, particularly by the two main leaders there?
Yeah, Sheila, look, the comments around sectarianism are just the kind of rank racism that I and many Muslims have become accustomed to in our politics, unfortunately. It seems like British Muslims are the only people in this country who are just not allowed to vote in their interest and on the issues that they're passionate about. I'll give you an example. If Ukrainian British voters voted on issues based on foreign policy, no one would bat an eyelid and say that's perfectly reasonable. If women were to vote, not in a whole block, but largely based on abortion rights or healthcare, for example, quite rightly, everybody would say that is part and parcel of politics, issues that people care about. But when Muslims do it, it's called sectarianism, it's called Islamism, by people who don't have the basic human courage to just say what they believe. And that's Muslims are only acceptable when they vote the right way, when they vote for one of the major two parties, for example. So I think this is a disgusting form of rank racism, and that politicians should have the basic courage to say what they mean. And that's that Muslims should vote a certain way. And if they don't, then they'll get all sorts of accusations thrown at them.
It's interesting. I was talking to a guest from More in Common, a research and polling group. I'm sure you're familiar with them. And he pointed out that when they had, before this, not connected to this by-election, but before it, not connected to the result, but before it, they specifically asked Gorton and Denton residents about Gaza and about the role it might be playing in their voting. And they said it was a factor, without a doubt, in not only in Muslim voters either. There are other people who are non-Muslims who are exercised by it. But it was interesting when you ask a more general question and say, how are you feeling about the government? How are you feeling about how Keir Starmer's performing? They don't start with Gaza, typically. They start with what anyone might start with, which is my kid can't get a job, or the house is a mess and I can't find a better one, or I want to move house and I can't, or whatever, food costs, or all the things that people are concerned about. And that's quite revealing, isn't it? That's telling and would support what you've just said.
Yeah, Sheila, you're absolutely right. This would all make sense if Labour was enormously popular with other communities and on other issues, and it was just Muslims that were the problem. Unfortunately, that's not the case, right? We're unpopular across the board. I think Darth Vader has a higher approval rating than the Labour Party does currently, right? So what I would gently remind all my colleagues that are talking about sectarianism is, rather than bunkering down and just throwing insults and dog whistle racism at minority communities, perhaps we should reflect on why we have some of the lowest polling ratings since ratings began. On the issue of sectarianism, just because it was in Keir Starmer's message that went to the PLP, look, I know Kemi Badenoch says it, but I couldn't care less what Kemi Badenoch has to say when she talks about tolerance, to be honest. On Keir Starmer's question of sectarianism.
Why? Do you think she's intolerant?
The way that she and her party have spoken about migrants, about Muslims. I mean, let's not forget, Robert Jenrick was a member of her party when he went to Birmingham and made really disgusting comments around the faces that he was seeing at Birmingham.
Too many brown faces, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe she needs to reflect on that. On my party, which I think I'm better placed to speak at, it wasn't sectarianism that made Keir Starmer go on your platform on LBC and make the comments he made around Gaza. It wasn't sectarianism that made senior Labour sources refer to Muslim voters who are abandoning the party as shaking off the fleas. It wasn't sectarianism that made other sources, senior Labour sources, talk about building a new electoral coalition that didn't include Muslims. None of this was sectarianism. None of this was Islamism. It was the actions and comments and words of senior people in our party. And to now throw sectarianism, to now throw this dog whistle racism at voters, it's just frankly pathetic.
Would you argue that those comments you've described there from some Labour people, including the Labour leader, do amount to sectarianism?
Oh, I don't know. No, I think there's a lot of racism. Yeah. Certainly, the senior sources that refer to Muslims as fleas, the Muslim voters leaving, that is as blatant racism as I've ever seen. Yeah. But what I think needs to be done is some genuine reflection. And I'll say this to colleagues across the Labour Party. Muslims have, for generations, found home in the Labour Party. My family did, many others did as well. And it's much easier to break something than to put it back together. And again, bunkering down into this sort of racist rhetoric around sectarianism and Muslims is only going to harm the Labour Party in the long run. I feel like I've been in a little bit of a sort of gaslighting Groundhog Day. We warned them. I personally, on this platform, warned them about Muslim communities being angry and frustrated at the Labour Party. I was laughed at and told that wasn't going to happen. We warned them about losing votes to the Greens, for example, and were told that's not going to happen. This is Labour versus Reform. We warned them about blocking Andy Burnham, who was clearly popular in Manchester, also amongst the Muslim community, by the way, and we were told that wasn't going to happen. So it leaves me thinking either some people very senior who think they're smart in my party are delusional, or their ideology is hell-bent on destroying the Labour Party.
I know you're not in the Green Party, you're in the Labour Party. Would you ever go Green?
Look, I don't look at political parties in the same way that other people do, in so far as they're not. I don't see them as football teams where I wear a shirt, you wear another shirt.
It's not your tribe. It's not your tribe.
Correct.
Yeah.
I believe in things in politics, and I want to advance them. For example, I believe in a better society and an equal society. I'm a socialist, and I believe that we can push that agenda in the Labour Party. We're the party of government, and it's a responsibility on me for Muslim communities as chair of the Labour Muslim network, but also as a political actor to change the party, and that's what my job is now.
Well, one of the things that Zach Polanski was challenged heavily on, not least by my colleague Ian Dale on LBC earlier this week, was the idea that Zionism is racism. And I was struck by hearing Hannah Spencer in her victory speech today saying, in fact I made a note of it here when she was made it, everybody belongs, and she was talking about her community, everyone belongs, everyone deserves a voice. And I mean, if she were here, I would ask her, do they? What about Zionists? And you've told every Zionist in Gorton and Denton that they're racists with this proposed policy. I mean, that's a tough one, isn't it? That's sectarianism, isn't it?
So I think, look, what you said earlier about this not being a Muslim issue is an important one. I've done a lot of these interviews where Gaza was spoken about as a predominantly Muslim issue. That's just not true. There are swathes and swathes of communities that are deeply concerned at the genocide committed against the Palestinian people in Gaza, the number of children that have been killed, the number of journalists that have been killed, the war crimes that are now being investigated. You know, you don't have to be Muslim. You have to have basic humanity and compassion for that to be a serious issue.
But you can have humanity and compassion and not agree with everything you've just said about that.
Of course.
War.
No, of course. Yeah, absolutely. And not everyone will agree. I'm sure the text messages on your screen will tell you not everybody agrees with what I'm saying now. But the point about our politics is, can we create a space where we have a reasonable dialogue on policy, where nobody has their question in this, their place in this country questioned, and we let the voters choose. And that's what the issue with that's what the real concern with the accusations and the racism around sectarianism is because just because Muslims have chosen a different way in this election does not mean that they should be hurled abuse at and accusations of Islamism and sectarianism. By the way, in a moment where we've just had two fellows walk into a mosque with an axe and a knife, and we've had another mosque that's being investigated for being firebombed in Worcester right now. So, you know, this isn't a theoretical thing that we're talking about. When I went to Friday prayer today, everyone's looking around their shoulders about where's the next axe coming from, where's the next
that makes it very important, doesn't it, to keep the temperature down on all of these things. Do you think? I mean, Kemi Badenoch's comment was public. The letter from Keir Starmer I read out has become public, but he wrote it to his MPs. Do you think it's irresponsible of them to speak in these terms?
Absolutely irresponsible. You can't, from one side of your mouth, condemn what happened in the Manchester mosque, for example, and the Islamophobia that led to that, and then on the other side of your mouth, dog whistle about sectarianism and George Galloway. I have no idea how George Galloway made into that statement, but
I can tell you how he did. He openly encouraged people to vote for the Greens.
Oh, did he?
In that election, That's why.
George Galloway, he blocked me a long time ago, and luckily
he did.
That was mutual.
He endorsed the candidate in this, the Green candidate, I should say, the winning candidate.
Yeah, maybe that's on par with how relevant Kemi Badenoch is. The two of them can go sit in a room.
And would you you talked about not being not being tribal in your thinking, that if another party is moving in the same direction as you'll work with them. On Zionism is racism, what would you say to Zach Polanski about that, given that we want as many voices as possible in the mix, including Muslims who disagree with Keir Starmer?
No, look, I like I said, I think a politics should be created where we can all have a reasonable discussion on that. So on working with Greens, for example, I have serious concerns, just as a British Muslim, a refugee to this country, about the threat of reform. That's just a personal issue, right? And I think it's incumbent on all progressive parties to work together. And that includes the Greens, for example. I think we should, you said I'm not tribal. I'm still a Labour man, right? I want Labour candidates.
No, you said you weren't tribal.
Well, yeah, no, I'm not tribal. But, I want Labour candidates elected everywhere, and I've supported the Labour Party. But the threat of stopping reform is a serious one, and we should be working across different political parties where reasonable to make that happen.
Ali Milani, thank you for joining me today.
Well, I'm not a Muslim. I'm Paddy from Belfast.
Hello.
Yes, I was actually born in 1937, so I was kicking about when Attlee was about. So
wow.
I've watched Labour Prime Ministers in all those years. Some were impressive, some weren't impressive. Tony Blair was extremely impressive and brought it himself with Iraq, etc. But these things pass. They all pass. But at the moment, at 88, I'd hoped to be supporting Labour for the rest of my life. But unfortunately, with the recent, and it really annoyed me about Palestine, I actually saw people being arrested in London for objecting or for protesting. And I couldn't believe that the Labour government was in power and this was happening. I just couldn't believe it. It seemed extraordinary to me. A Labour Party in power.
It's important to say, particularly when we talk about the sectarian claims made, it's important that we say it isn't just Muslims who object to Labour's position on Israel, on Palestine, on Gaza.
Exactly, but I actually set my alarm clock up to listen to the result of the by-election, and I was hoping that Labour would win it. I'm still sort of, and then I heard that young Green girl talking this morning, and she talked so much sense, and suddenly I thought to myself, have I been bamboozled all these years? What sort of policies have Labour, nowadays, Starmer is a very nice guy, and I trust him like the way I would trust my bank manager. He's not exciting, but I would trust him. But I've begun to, am I right? Am I right to trust these guys? Because I honestly don't see, a lot of people in the Labour Party seem to be more supporting of America.
What about?
Maybe it's old age is doing this to me, but I'm getting a bit cranky.
Well, a bit of clarity comes with that as well, doesn't it? Old age.
I don't know. Certainly, wisdom doesn't come with it.
What about, away from the sort of specific topics you've been talking about, what about what Labour has done in power so far in terms of?
It's grand, and it seemed to be bearing fruit. That's the annoying thing about it. It seemed to be bearing fruit. And they're doing it all with this bloody Gaza policy and their Palestine policy. It's just anything America seems to do, we'll back and we'll jump on that boat. I'd hope to vote Labour or back Labour until the day I died, and now I doubt it.
And if you don't, are you looking at the Greens?
Yeah, I would. If there was a Green Party in Northern Ireland, I would vote them, yeah. I think I would. And I never thought I would say that in my life.
Yeah. What about if there was a different leader in Labour?
No, I quite like Starmer. He's a gentleman, and he's honest, and that's what I want.
So for you, it is just Gaza?
Yep, absolutely.
OK, thank you very much, Owen. Owen calling from Belfast. Brian is called from Rayleigh. Hi.
Hello, Nashina. Yeah, I think it's all about Gaza, this election. Got a big Muslim vote. I would imagine they've been told vote for Greens, and that's what's happened. Is as simple as that. I think.
Told by whom?
Well, by the man or whoever they've told them. I mean, they've been told this has happened before, where they've been sort of advised to vote for a certain party.
Well, listen, I said, I don't know whether you listened to my conversation with Lewis earlier on. When I was a kid, we went to Mass every Sunday. And if there was an important vote, whether it was a general election or a referendum on something or whatever was happening, but we'd often have a bishop's letter read out from the pulpit. Now, it would never say, from my memory, it would never say, you must not vote this way or you cannot vote this, it would never be that clumsy. But it would guide you in your thinking as you made your choice about how you would vote. That's certain, and that still happens. That's not exclusive to, I don't know if imams are doing this, but it's not exclusive to the Muslim religion.
Well, I think it's very much so, because, you've also got this business about the families going in to vote. You've got Penny who doesn't speak English, and she so put your ex there.
Yeah. Well, it's possible, but again, those are claims that have been made and have yet to be properly substantiated.
Well, it's a big... it's not... Most people in this country are not obsessed by Gaza and Palestine, but there is an element, certainly in Manchester, from what I've seen...
It's not only Manchester and it's not only Muslims.
Pardon?
It's not only Manchester and it's not only Muslims.
It's mainly, this sort of brainwashed... A lot of brainwashed wrinklies who seem to follow it. But it's not the main thing in most people's lives. But I'm sure that's what it is there. The main thing is immigration and crime, definitely.
All right, I'll leave it there, Brian. Thank you, Brian. Nouman has called from New Malden. Hello, Nouman.
Hi, Sheila. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, yes. Did I get your name right? Is it Nouman or Nouman?
No, it's Nouman.
Nouman, good.
Yeah. I was actually in the middle of doing some DIY when I just heard the news, and when Kate Badenoch, whatever she said, I did not hear about what Keir Starmer said. I would have put all these three into the same category, but Kate Badenoch in particular, she's a reform. She's a closet reform. If she hadn't been elected as a leader, I am telling you, I can guarantee you that she would have been with the rest of the people that have moved to reform.
What makes you say that?
Well. I just have this feeling. I'm not no expert, but the hatred and the kind of stuff that she speaks about Muslim. I don't know what is the problem with Muslims.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure she had a problem. Well, she would claim I don't have a problem with Muslims. She would have a problem, she says, with Labour. In her view, this is her view now. Labour and Reform and the Greens using the Muslim vote in a particular way.
How can you use Muslim vote?
I don't know, but that's what she's claiming.
I know we all have certain issues that are very close to our heart. Okay, we all deeply care about certain things. Some people care about schooling. Some people care about certain things. My children, unfortunately, they've gone out of school and things like that and whatever it is. Now I see Gorton and Denton, they said it's sectarianism or whatever it is she's calling. If people from Gorton and Denton, as your previous gentleman from the Labour, Muslim, whatever that was, he mentioned that, or you said that when they asked people, what are the issues, Gaza did not come the first thing.
Not when they were asked a general question,
yes, yeah. When they asked a general question. For me, if I was living in Gorton, I would have said Gaza, the way Amy Badenoch's party, Labour Party, Reform Party, how they have kept quiet or haven't done enough about the genocide that Israel still
and I'm pushing back against that word, just doing my job. You clearly believe that there's sufficient evidence to call it a genocide. Lots of people don't, and there has not been any prosecution yet that led to the word genocide being concluded. I'm just doing my job, Nouman.
That's fine. That's okay. I respect that. And if I was there, I would have voted Green. Maybe I don't agree with the other problems or other issues that they're talking about, legalizing drugs and this and that. I don't agree with that. But my position is that I am very, very concerned about the main parties, their silence about what is happening in Gaza, not doing enough. Britain, being the great power in this world, hasn't done anything. They can't say anything.
One of their policies, as I'm sure you know, is to end any arming of Israel, any arms deals with Israel. Would you expect them to look at all other arms deals?
And of course.
Because otherwise it does look a little suspect, doesn't it?
70,000 people have been killed, Sheila. 70,000. Of course, what happened in Israel is absolutely awful. Absolutely. But it doesn't justify killing 70,000 people, and still killing is still going on. under the pretext of yellow line or this line or that line. It's just completely nonsense.
There's lots of different types of killing going on there, aren't there, as well? That people aren't particularly minded to talk about. I'm talking about the killing by Hamas on Palestinians.
Yes, of course,
that's going on.
Of course. But Israel is a major contributor of killing in this particular instance. So basically,
there's been a war.
Sorry,
there's been a war. That's why.
Yeah, but they're still carrying on. Still killing 70,000 people is no joke. 70,000, somebody's child, mother, daughter, whatever it is. It's just awful. I don't even want to talk about it. It's just going to ruin my weekend.
Okay. Well, thank you, Nouman, for your call. Juliet's call from Edgware. Hello.
Yeah, hi. Really, I'm just responding to the speaker before last, the Muslim representative. Look, I agree with him in terms of the people, and it's perfectly natural and it's perfectly okay to vote on international issues. A Ukrainian would vote for what's going on in Ukraine. So completely...
neither Ukrainians nor Muslims all necessarily agree with each other, do they?
No, you're absolutely right. I think the issue, and I think the fear of politicians, is the suspicions of why people, for example, will possibly vote because of Gaza. Now, obviously, awful things are going on in Gaza, but the stats clearly show throughout the East, the highest. Basically, most Muslims are murdered by Muslims. Okay, so what I'm saying is why is it that there isn't the anger on the streets for, say, what's going on in Iran or the persecution of women and gays in Iraq? I think the problem when you're saying, it's because there's a genocide going on in Gaza, okay, it's because it's so limited to the non-Muslim threat. But where are the Muslims showing their love for Muslims outside of Gaza, which is the majority
and
of
that leads
region?
You,
and I think that
leads you what to suspect what?
Well, with suspicions that we are more divided here, and it's not just about love for those suffering in Gaza, okay? Because if it was just about love of other people, okay, and our love of our Muslim brethren suffering, my question would be, why are there not people on the streets marching that our government should do things for the awful suffering and murders and massacres going on for normal Muslims in every single Muslim country?
Well, what do you conclude? What do you conclude?
I conclude that it's while I understand that people might want to vote for Gaza, if I thought it was genuinely just for Gaza because they care, okay.
What do you suspect it's for?
It wasn't just a little bit more about being anti-Jewish, but actually the one thing Muslims can agree on, okay, one can argue, is, well, these are Jews, so we're all safe to go against the Jews. Gosh, let's not unravel the stuff that's going on the rest of the Muslim bloc. My gosh, all the murders and the attacks on gays and the hangings of feminists and all those kind of things going on. And I don't think there's anybody that would say that's not going on. It's well documented in every other country that live next to Israel. So I think that's where the fear is with politicians, that, well, they're not doing it for other murders of their brethren.
Right.
So is there another ulterior motive?
Well, let me zoom in a bit. Let me zoom in a bit back into Gorton with what you've just said, in light of what you've just said. Where that breaks down, I understand the suspicions you're raising. I understand them clearly. But where that breaks down a little is that these supposed anti-Western, anti-Jewish Muslim voters in Gorton have just voted in a left-wing feminist woman whose party is led by a Jewish man.
Right. So, I mean, firstly, when we say Jewish man or Jewish this or left-wing feminism, I'm not saying that every, God forbid that every Muslim is, because they're not arguing about what's going on in the rest of the Muslim world, that they're anti-feminist and anti-this and anti-that. And by the way, you can get some very left-wing Jewish people that are also kind of self-hating Jews in inverted commas, just like there are in every single sector of society. So no one's saying that they're against everything. I think what makes them, I bet you the Jew we're talking about isn't pro-Israel at all. I could be wrong if you're,
yes, but the word
pro-Jew.
Jew and Israel isn't necessarily always.
You know what? You're absolutely
co-adjacent,
right.
is it?
It isn't always. Okay, it isn't always, and your speakers will say, no, we love Jews. It just doesn't. But what I don't understand then is if that's the case, why aren't they do you know what? If Jews are suffering all over the world, every Jew would be bothered wherever they are. Why is it that they're just bothered about the ones in Gaza? Do you know what's going on in Iraq, Iran? Okay, Muslim children, right? So why they're not? I mean, I can't believe Jews wouldn't be complaining about other Jews. Why is it just Gaza, the smallest part of persecution in the entire Middle East? If you're talking numbers, the smallest part, and I'm not saying it's not important.
Okay, I take your point. I'm going to leave it there, Juliet, because we've gone back to the beginning of what you were saying. But thank you so much for your call.